Hey, Ryan, what's going
That
on?
guy over there.
That guy. There's a guy with me on this show.
Random dude showed up.
A random bearded Linux user.
That's what he said he was.
All right, are you ready?
Yeah, let's do this.
Okay.
Welcome to another episode of Destination Linux Podcast.
Welcome to episode 39 of Destination Linux. Today we're going to cover the Ubuntus, all of the beta releases, a little gaming news, and some more. So stick around. With me is Ryan. Ryan, what's going on?
Been having a blast. You know what I've been playing with? Something that you've been picking on me about. And I'm going to bring it, I'm going to air it out here in the open.
Wait. I picked on you?
You were picking on me about this. Now, I've converted recently to XFCE.
Welcome to 1999.
I was playing Alanis Morissette. Isn't it ironic? In the background, I installed it. And guess what? I'm kind of falling in love.
No,
I know
you're not.
I'm a KDE fan at heart, but XFCE is so robust in what you can change with it, what you can modify with it. And in fact, I've liked it so much that both my laptop and my desktop are now XFCE desktop.
Really, dude?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, you've got to add a lot to it, but once you start making those changes, you find that the things you're adding into it work. Like they because you're adding in the things that you typically like versus just getting them handed to you, and then you find out a month later that this feature's broken or that feature's broken. It just seems like you can, you want a dock, you put in Cairo in there. You want different notification panels, you can change it. You want different colors and theming, Rocco. Am I selling you on this now? The theming, you can theme it any way your heart desires.
There's only one distribution that does XFCE well,
What's
and that's
that?
Manjaro. It's the only one.
Really?
It's the only one.
I've been doing Xubuntu, and it's been running pretty well. I've not had any issues with it. It's been very solid. I've been on it for probably 2 weeks since me and you had our late night let's switch our desktop.
Oh my gosh, till 4 in the morning
session.
And so after you've done that now, it's about a week or two now. So what did you do with the other day? Because you spent the first 5 days trying to customize XFCE to get it to actually perform like a desktop.
Well, I've been customizing it little by little, finding things that I wanted or that were missing that I wanted to add into it. I switched to Nautilus File Manager, for instance. I believe it came with Thunar as its basic one, but for me, not having ability to have search function built into your file manager right off the bat, or having to add an overlay into that, I think they use Catfish.
Yep.
I didn't want to play with that, so I ended up, changing that out. So I've made a lot of custom tweaks. We'll probably do a video on it at some point of all the tweaks and changes that I've made. But right now, including Conky, I've got Conky going for theming. I'm sure you know what Conky is.
I know exactly what Conky is.
I'm surprised you're not on the Conky team, frankly.
Well, to be honest with you, Conky is really good, but it's more to me for like a second monitor option, because 99% of the time I have open windows up. So you really don't even see what the Conky's displaying, except if it's on a second screen. So in that scenario, it works really well.
Yeah, I didn't add a lot of the Conky features because, like you said, some of them are just, and you could customize them if you want to get into all the coding and everything, but I didn't want to do that. So I used some simple ones for time and date on the actual desktop wallpaper itself and stuff like that. But it's been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed XFCE. A lot of people had told me to check out XFCE, but I've avoided it because typically I'm one of those guys that like what I get out of the box. Like KDE is beautiful out of the box. That's what I've been going for. But for whatever reason, I got into this tweaking mode where I wanted to sit there and play with these and different changes and things. And its flexibility is incredibly impressive. I mean, it's flexible, yet it's very hard to break. And that's the difference between it and a lot of these other light packages that I found, that you can mess them up really bad and you can't get back to square one.
Yep.
Whereas XFCE, you can do all the tweaking, but I haven't been able to break it. And that says a lot for XFCE right there. Because if I can't break it, it's pretty tough and robust. What about you? What have you been up to this week?
What have I been up to? Well,
you switched to LXQT?
No. No, doing this show makes it difficult to switch to another desktop environment, especially on the main machine.
Definitely.
So
Yep.
I got to keep everything stable. But I did have to redo some things for the website, or will have to redo some things for the website for
Nice.
switching to Manjaro GNOME. So I haven't been doing any distro hopping or anything like that. Now I did install what we're going to talk about later, one of the Ubuntus. But
nice.
We'll talk about it. What's the big news of the day?
Everything's Ubuntu, but the big news of the day is Ubuntu is dropping 32-bit desktop images.
That's the big news of the day. And the Telegram groups have just lit up. Everybody has an opinion on this, man. Everybody.
Yeah.
And it just seems like you could see it was coming. I mean, Arch was the first one to drop it from their images and stuff. But, I mean, obviously you could see it coming, but when it actually happens, and, man, when Ubuntu says they're going to drop it, it's the talk of the town. And there's really, really hardcore opinions on both sides. You know.
Now, Manjaro made this decision recently as well.
Yep.
Right? When we had them on, they talked about the support for 32-bit ending. So it's interesting. They were kind of a little bit ahead of Canonical in this. And, you know, I know this is not going to be a popular opinion, but I think this is ultimately going to be a good thing for Linux. I've talked about why in the past, that, you know, when I first came to Linux, it was all about, oh, look what you can do with old hardware and all these things. And the whole point of a lot of the videos that I've done and do is about, look what you can do with the latest and greatest. That's not to say everybody has to have the latest and greatest, but any computer you buy today, even the crappiest junk that you can get, or your phone, for instance, runs on a 64-bit architecture.
Yep.
So continuing to take resources and focus them on 32-bit, I understand why they're making this decision, because it even says in the article they don't have people to test it. There's not enough people to go through and test the changes that they're making to even determine if it's working or not.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's not like Ubuntu will no longer work on a 32-bit operating system. It's just that they're no longer going to support it and test it and to make sure that it works on that. So You're still going to have other ISOs that will be able to run 32-bit. It's just that you're not going to have the main ISO be able to be 32-bit, or at least not supported.
Right. I mean, this is a perfect opportunity for individuals who financially or whatever have to have a 32-bit, you know, system that they can use other ISOs out there that will probably be built to continue to support that. But from, you know, a main flagship distributions, it looks like they're all going to be making this decision likely, and it's probably ultimately for the good. To spend their resources where they need to be, which is making sure that it's current and also future-proof.
Well, the choices are getting cut down. So there are still some distributions out there, and I think Ubuntu MATE is one of them. But there are still ones that support 32-bit. It's just the availability of the choices is going down. But there was a poll last year for OMGubuntu that asked, you know, what do you run? And the results of that poll were that 92% run 64-bit already. So maybe that's not a showstopper as far as that's not everybody out there, but it is something to say that a lot of people are already running 64-bit.
Yeah. So I'm not terribly upset about this, but then again, I'm not a 32-bit user, so it's kind of selfish to say, I guess. But as far as just looking at
That
Linux
was totally
as a whole,
selfish, dude.
I think it's important. You've got to take a stand.
That's totally selfish of you.
Speaking of taking a stand,
what do we got?
we have to do something about the email notifications on icons. Have you ever noticed in your Gmail it says 900,956 billion unread messages? Well, if you go ahead.
Well, look, I'm using GNOME right now, and Dash to Dock does not tell me how many emails I have on Thunderbird.
And is it that peaceful?
It is peaceful.
It's about to go away.
What?
You're about to lose it. So Ubuntu Dock now supports progress bars and badge counts. Badge counts being those little counters at the edge of an icon that tell you, specific information like how many emails you have unread, which on my phone have become completely worthless because it just got to the point where you give up at a certain number there. But they're neat to have. And if you have an inbox you keep cleaner, then it certainly is more advantageous than me, who's had this same email box for 20-something years. But that not only are they doing that, but they have some overlays that they're having with progress bars as well. And this I actually find really useful. So if you're going to download, say, a new ISO because you're distro hopping, but you're also gaming Rocket League over here on one of your other monitors, you'll be able to see the progress up on your dash of how far along that download is, which I think is an awesome feature.
It's definitely a nice touch that gives a little polish to everything. I do like the download status. I also like the, I'm all joking aside, I do like the badge numbers to say when there's an email there. And this actually works well with our next couple topics as far as the trace items going away. But this is something that I don't know if it's going to work exactly with Dash to Dock. I don't know how that. I assumed that Dash to Dock and the Ubuntu Dock were going to kind of go in the same direction, or maybe the options were going to be the same. I don't know if this is going to be an option in Dash to Dock or if it's just going to be available in the Ubuntu Dock.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I love little touches like that. I think that they're important, and it's something a lot of people have gotten used to seeing, especially even on your device. I don't know if you've noticed that when you're downloading things on your device and you close the browser, a lot of times you'll see the little progress bar there, or, your email counts. This is kind of bringing these screens together. They talk about 3 screens, your TV, your computer, your phone, and they're kind of, building a lot of the same things you'd expect on your phone, which you spend a lot of time into your platform on your desktop. And that's really important when it comes to user experience integration, I think. And I love seeing changes like that. They seem small, but they're really cool.
Yep. Well, some of the docks out there have badges already, so it works out. But speaking of the tray icons, there is bad news, dude, for users of TopIcons.
This is the second week you've brought bad news to us.
I'm sorry, man. There's nothing I can do about it. So I guess there's a little, and I don't know the inside story of it, but there are developers out there who have a problem with the lead people in GNOME. And one of them is the developer of TopIcons Plus. So this is basically going to be going away. And one of the reasons why it's going away is because they are adding the case status notifier by default to 1710.
Right.
So it's kind of like it's two of the same things. So, and I've actually installed case status notifier, but it doesn't work with all of the tray icons. So there are tray icons that it will work with, but there are also other ones that won't even show up in case status notifier. So maybe those programs need to be upgraded to work with it. I don't know, but it just seems there's an inner quarrel going on, and it's a shame because we're going to be losing an awesome extension.
Well, the developer, his name, and I hope I don't mispronounce it, Foshin, it looks like his wording in the article is kind of, you can feel the frustration coming off immediately. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but he talks about the GNOME project not caring about his project, and he's made it very public to the point to this extension, but they're going to basically, he's saying they're going to be moving to one that's unmaintained and outdated for moving to their own extension. So I guess he's kind of giving a dig at what they've selected there, the case status notifier, and basically saying that they're not very easy to work with, which Seems like it's a little bit of a theme out there. I don't know how much truth there is into it or not, but it's interesting to see, and it's sad. Hopefully he moves on to doing some other projects, because clearly he created an extraordinarily popular extension. So he's got tons of talent. You would think different development teams and things would be swarming to try to get him to work on some projects for them.
Yes, but he basically created an extension that took the icons from a ridiculous spot down on the bottom left and put them where you would think that they would be, where you would expect them to be. It was so simple and yet so awesome. And that's why it's so popular, because that's where they should be. And it's just a shame to see the quarreling going on, because, like I said, we'll end up losing that. Now, it may go on. It may be forked. It may be made to work with it. I've seen people in some of the Telegram groups mention the fact that they might just patch it for certain operating systems so that it works with theirs. So we'll see what happens. We'll have to let it play out. But it's a shame if we actually do lose that.
Interesting. So the whole world, the whole news segment today is going to have lots of Ubuntu in it. And this segment has lots of information in it here. You just went on and on and on and on, didn't you, Rocco?
Well, the release notes for the betas are, some of them are very, very detailed. Some of them are not so detailed. Mm-hmm. But I'm not technical enough to cover everything detailed wise in all of the betas. Otherwise, I would be coding for them. So we're just going to do some quick hits on some of the features that we picked out and want to talk about.
Well, I use that jokingly, but it's amazing how many new features and enhancements were put in there. And honestly, it's awesome to see this much work going into it. We're talking about Ubuntu Budgie 17.10 Beta 2. Their new features and enhancement list is extensive, and a lot of them are awesome. And like Rocco said, there's so many in here, it would take us an entire news segment just to go through all of them, which is impressive by itself. But we've grabbed some here that are highlights for us. For instance, like Files 3.26 with folder color to change the color and add emblems to folders. Again, some of this stuff you may be rolling your eyes like, oh, why is that important, or who cares? Where are the big features? But this stuff matters in the user experience, and I see so much attention to detail, which I know you love, Rocco. But the attention to detail in these features and enhancements is extensive. GNOME-based apps are now available at the latest upstream version 3.26.
Well, they're going to benefit from using 3.26 for all of their apps. So
right, yep. Replace GNOME photos with GThumb. So that's an interesting change there. Have you used GThumb?
I used to use GThumb a couple years ago, and it's actually a pretty competent photo viewer. I don't know if it's better now. I haven't used it in a while. I don't know if it's better than GNOME Photos. I'm not sure exactly the reason of why they did that, but I'm okay with using GThumb. It works perfect for me, because I'm not looking for, like, if I want to seriously edit photos and stuff like that, I'm not going to use GNOME Photos anyway. That's basically just to be a viewer. So GThumb works great.
Absolutely. And then you've got the global menu applet can be added to the panel now.
Yep.
So we talked about global menus last week. It's not something I necessarily go and add into a distribution if I'm missing it, but if it's there, I'll use it. Budgie Desktop 10.4. So that's an uplift from 10.2.9, right?
Yeah. So in 1704, you could add the PPA to get 10.4 Budgie, but 10.4 will be default in 1710. So
yep.
You also have more support in the Raven panel. So it now supports Spotify, which the more music players you have it support, the better, because I use Google Music Player. Okay. But you may use.
Of course you do.
Of course I do. Do you know why? Because it's better. Okay.
Oh, wow. We're going there, are we?
But the point being is, I may use one player, you may use another. So
Right.
the more support that it gains, and it's gaining support for Spotify, which is a very popular music player.
I'm pretty sure it's one of the most, if not the most popular music player out there.
It's not better than Google Music Player, just saying.
I didn't say better. I said more
Oh,
popular.
okay, all right. But the more support it has, the more people are going to use it. Because like I said, I have my favorite music player, you have yours, and we all want our music player. If you have a feature in the Raven panel for it to work with, where you can skip to the next song, see the album art, that kind of thing, you're going to want it to work with your music player that you like. So
Yeah, this is actually an interesting feature because this is in your, the Raven notification panel portion. And when I was on Ubuntu Budgie and I had those notifications for those things, before that, I never thought I needed it or wanted it. But now when I don't have those notifications when I'm running it, I really miss it.
you look for it there.
Yeah, it's one of those things you really get addicted to. So I love that.
Hey, this is one that I like. All popovers are now stylishly animated.
Well, thank goodness.
Hey,
It's about
it's
time.
the small details that go into making it a great, as you call it, user experience.
Yeah, if you look at the notes here, we're literally touching a third of the updates here. It's insane the amount of work that they've put into this.
All right, so along with all of the features and enhancements that they have done, they've also resolved some issues.
Yeah, some of those issues are really important ones, like reduced memory idle usage by dropping tracker-related applications. So this is very
Are
important.
they tracking us, dude?
They're tracking us. We've uncovered a conspiracy.
I think we have. You heard it here first on Destination Linux.
But this is really important, especially when you're running on lower end machines that don't have the memory. I'm seeing a lot of machines enter the market. The trend's kind of reversing where now memory is getting very expensive and they're sending these machines out with very low memory, like 4 gigabytes on a brand new machine. And so, the experience here is very important when you're basically getting rid of any of that memory waste that's happening, because that's going to obviously have an impact on your experience with the operating system overall. So then you've got display video thumbnails and files. How important is this?
Look, man, displaying
Oh
the video
gosh.
thumbnails is not something that you think about on a daily basis, but when you're looking for one of your videos, how annoying is it to go into a folder of 30, 40 videos in a folder and all you see is a video icon? Without you need it.
As a content creator for YouTube, this is one of the key features that I cannot stand if I don't see. As a lot of times you can go in and you have to actually set in the settings of the file manager to view thumbnails, not just locally, but everywhere, because I have a lot of stuff because of how big these files get that are on networks and everywhere else, but not being able to see that thumbnail. I mean, how many times for me personally, I have to cut a video or record and stop, and I have to look and see it based on the thumbnail, which is the one I'm actually going to work on and edit. Now, some would say you could come up with a better filing system and naming convention, but hey, don't judge me.
Don't judge. It's the little
I just
things,
want
dude.
display, video, thumbnail, and files.
It's the little things.
That's a big one for content creators.
All right, so this is one that you pointed out. Plymouth now correctly shows the crypt password entry field for when drives are encrypted. So what's the deal with that?
Well, I don't know about Plymouth specifically, but I will tell you in using Ubuntu and utilizing the Xubuntu and utilizing the encryption at boot and the encryption home folder, I have run the home folder is not the issue. It's the encryption at boot when you choose that encrypt your hard drive option, where it's this major pain where you cannot get back into your system, boot back in your system, because the splash screen does not actually display an entry field for you to put your password in there. It may flash the splash screen up, but there's nowhere to put your password. So it sounds very similar to what I've been running into. Plymouth now correctly shows the crypt password entry field for when drives are encrypted, which it's a major pain. There are ways to get around it. For instance, you can boot into basically the protected mode within Grub, and then from there you can start your system and it will show you the splash screen, or you can edit your Grub settings to actually put no splash there, so the splash screen doesn't come up and you just get the text box to enter in your encryption. But this is a major failure that I ran into not only on my desktop, but also on my laptop. Major pain in the butt to figure out a workaround for. I'm hoping this is a fix for that because it's such a pain.
Well, they also have fixed some of the app indicators. So you have Steam and a couple other ones that don't show properly. So they'll show like really huge icons. And this I noticed in not just Budgie, but a few different desktop environments. And they have fixed the app indicator applet to not display them so big and kind of like go in line with everything else, which is...
Doesn't happen in XFCE.
Imagine that. That's because they haven't updated. They haven't updated XFCE since 1999. That's why.
How dare you, sir?
I can't say that. They're coming out. They're coming out with an update soon.
They're doing awesome stuff.
I'm sorry.
Don't mistake our picking on each other for actually not liking this stuff. They slimmed down the ISO size. So they shrink the ISO from approximately 1.7 gigabytes, 1704 to 1.3.
That's magic, dude. They've added all of this stuff and they've slimmed it down. How does that happen?
Spyware.
Well, another Ubuntu has come out with a beta, which is Ubuntu MATE. And they have done a ton of work in this beta, even from the first alpha. They've done a ton of work. So we're not going to cover everything. We're just going to do some quick hits on it. Mutiny panel layout has everything working properly in it. And we'll cover some of the things that it actually, that they have actually fixed to make it work. But that is something that's been updated. The global menu support. Now, you said you weren't a user of this, but you do enjoy using global menus?
When they're there, I love them. Yeah.
Okay, so the global menu support is now improved, and it actually works with only certain layouts in Ubuntu MATE. So with the contemporary, Cupertino, and Mutiny layouts, that it will work with those layouts, but with the other ones, it's not enabled. All right.
I love this comment, though, that they made under that about the global menu. They said, thanks to the excellent testing and feedback they've had for 17.10 Alpha 2. And the reason why I want to highlight that is you may not be a coder, and we've talked about this before, but going in and just testing these betas and giving them feedback on things that you see, like in Rocco's case, 4 pixels missing to the left of
I won't
screen.
bring up the 1 pixel line that I've seen in Ubuntu MATE. I will leave that out.
You're going to leave it, or you're not going to touch it.
I'm not.
You're not going to air that publicly.
I'm not going to air that publicly and say that there's a 1 pixel discrepancy in the welcome screen.
That's white bordered. So it doesn't match.
That doesn't match. But they're doing excellent work.
That's where you can do some feedback. See, you can
go
in there
I should
and
be
do
doing
your
some feedback
to them. And that's a great way to contribute. And I love that they thanked everyone for doing that. So even if you're not a coder and can't break into the code, you still can provide excellent help that they appreciate very much to get all of these changes in.
You know what they don't appreciate?
What's that?
People making videos and people doing podcasts that just complain about 1 pixel lines and then don't do anything about it and don't tell them. And
as we go through a list of thousands of awesome changes. Yeah.
All right, so they have improved the HUD, and one of the things they've improved is the action of it. So when by default, it's supposed to, if you hit Alt, it's supposed to bring up the HUD when you're in an application. In the Alpha 2, it did not operate all the time. It did not function all the time properly. So they have actually done some things with the way the keys get captured. And now I actually installed it before this podcast, and I can happily report that the HUD comes up 100% of the time when I hit Alt.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yep.
That's a great change. So they've also made some changes here with the Slick Reader. They switched to Slick Reader, which will use Light DM under the hood, but also has a much nicer look and feel. All of this about feels and themes and looks.
I think, does XFCE use Light DM? Maybe they should update to the Slick Reader.
Wait till we have the XFCE development team on.
Someday we're going to have them on, and then I'll have to just like say, I'm so sorry for picking on you all this time.
I'm going to excuse myself.
All right, so File Manager received some updates, and one thing I was curious about, they replaced Kaja GKSU with Kaja Admin. I don't know if that works differently now. I guess that's the way you would get into opening it as root. So I'm not exactly sure what that means for it, but I thought that was pretty interesting.
There are certain distributions or setups, file managers where you can right click and get right into root, which I've loved. I can't think of the exact distribution I was playing with that had that, or the file manager that had that, but I definitely was searching for it. I ended up, Nautilus doesn't have that feature out of the box, but I love that. So maybe this is something I could go look at.
I'm pretty sure Ubuntu MATE has that out of the box.
That may have been where I saw it then.
I'm pretty sure
because I really loved that feature. It was very useful. Now, some will say that can be really dangerous, but I loved it. If you have the root password, you have the root password. It's just saving you some steps.
The good folks over at KD think that we shouldn't have the ability to use that anymore, so we won't go there. All right, so this is one thing that I thought was awesome. And, we talked about Ubuntu Budgie and all of the list of features and things that they have added that we weren't going to talk about. But on the blog post with Ubuntu MATE, it has a statement that says, under all of the features and all of the things that you have listed, it says the bit no one reads but probably should. And I think that is absolutely awesome because it is so true that it is the items that are listed are going to be, some of them are going to be technical, some of them are going to be, ho-hum. But this is the stuff that goes into all of their hard work. This is where it goes into. These guys are doing this for free. Not for free. I shouldn't say it like that. These guys are putting their own free time into making this a better desktop environment, a better operating system, whatever you want to call it. And it's all these little changes. Those little changes need to be highlighted, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some of those awesome changes that they have? Well, they've got add bold style classes for global menu, improve menu items by adding slightly more padding. I know you love that. Right,
dude, the padding, I'll tell you how important it is. There's an extension in GNOME to reduce the padding on the system tray.
And you have it.
And I have it installed because it does, and it works perfectly. This is stuff that matters, dude.
Now, the one that I'm uncertain of, I wanted to get your opinion on this, and I know you have some you wanted to highlight too, is the added defaults for Chromium, which will show the Ubuntu MATE start page should you install it. Now, the Manjaro team does this as well. When you open your browser for the first time, it takes you to the Manjaro pages. And because I have it set up in Chromium to save my settings globally, when I've gone into other distributions and been playing with them, it will open those Manjaro tabs there. So they were saved at some point as part of the tabs. Do you like that kind of start page from them? Is it something you've ever used where you're like, oh, good, let me go click and read through it?
No, I don't like it at all. I'm sorry.
But you could see the point.
I see the point. Okay. Yeah. I get it. And for newer users, that's great that it has that start page there. But for me personally, I like for Firefox, even though I don't use Firefox as my daily driver web browser, I do have my profile that I save and keep throughout every distro that I hop to. So I end up taking the .mozilla folder and bringing it over every time I hop to another distro, which removes anything that they have put in anyway. So they have customized it in the .mozilla folder in your home folder, and that gets removed. So I don't really use it, but it's nice that it's there.
Yeah.
You have improve clock applet button. So it's consistent, Ryan, with other buttons. This is important stuff.
Oh my gosh, let's move on.
Seriously though, how many times do we talk about, say, Solus, where we say that it's consistent across the board, where it's cohesive across the board? This is all the little things that go into making it consistent across the board. I'm glad other people appreciate it to work on it.
You appreciate all of their work. Well, I love the way they worded this last one we'll cover, which is experimental high DPI support is a little less experimental. That's their update note there, which I love. So they're definitely, that's kind of the theme from last week we were talking about, is that high DPI stuff. So,
well, not to be outdone, all of the betas are out, okay, for all of the Ubuntus. So you have Lubuntu, Xubuntu, or actually it's supposed to be called Xubuntu, I guess. And then you have Kylin, which is spelled Kylin. So there you have that.
Really? That's supposed to be Kylin?
Yeah, that's how
You're
you say
kidding
it. No,
me.
that's how you say it, Kylin.
No, it's no.
It's spelled Kylin, but it's supposed to be pronounced Chillin.
Chillin would be Chillin, and you'd have a little apostrophe up there. Like, what?
Yeah. So look, we don't have time to cover all of them.
No, we need to keep talking about Chillin here. This is ridiculous. What is going on in the Linux community with taking a regularly spelled word and then just changing it? Where is hooked on phonics for people? It's wrong.
Look, man. They're going to pronounce it the way they want to pronounce it, and don't judge them.
I can't say I'm releasing a Linux distribution. It's SHOL, SHOE, which most people would say shoe, but I'd be like, no, it's pronounced Zyrtec. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, oh, you're so dumb. It's Zyrtec, clearly.
Well, some of them are harder than others. I'll admit. Some of them are pretty bad as far as.
There's no language where that's chillin'. None.
Well, in the Linux world, that's chillin'.
You got me all worked up.
In the Linux world, we are chillin'.
We're chilling. All right, let's move on before I get really mad.
Okay, so Kubuntu is not going to be outdone. So the reason I bring those up is we don't have time to cover all of those, but we are going to cover Kubuntu as the last one. And they are releasing their beta 2, and it will have Plasma 5.10.5 as the default. And so, 17.10 in general will have 5.10.5. You also have the KDE applications at 17.04.3, which is good if you have had problems with certain KDE applications like Kdenlive Live that have crashed in certain development stages. So that will be 17.04.3. And what do you think about this one? VLC now replaces Dragon Player as the default media player.
So happy about that. I mean, the first thing I do is go and change that default.
What do you have against dragons? I don't understand.
Dragons. Well, let me tell you something. I have nothing against dragons. I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan. The hometown my family comes from in Germany has a giant dragon statue at the entrance of it. I love dragons.
Mm-hmm. But you don't like players.
But the dragon player, I don't like players. Dragon Player was okay, but VLC just has so much more. Maybe it's just familiarity for me, but it just seemed like it supports more. And the first thing I do generally when I get, trying to open a file and it's not compatible is just switch to VLC and it just works. So I guess it's more of a familiarity thing, and having used VLC back even when I was on Windows days, it's just something I'm familiar with and love.
Only back then?
Yeah, and now.
VLC is not something that I use as a default player. So
that's what Google product do you use?
The Google
G player.
No, actually I use SM Player as my default player. I think it's the best out there. So
SM Player. I'll have to check that out.
Yep. So they're going to replace, well, not going to replace, but they're going to ship the Muon package manager as default, as an alternative to Plasma Discover. Probably because Plasma Discover is completely broken. No, did I say that out loud?
Oh man, that's
I can just hear
again.
I can just hear Michael Tunnell. He's gonna be like, "What?
I need to talk to both of you right after this show." Yeah,
but it is not ready for prime time, in my opinion. Plasma Discover's not. So, Muon Package Manager is now shipped by default. KTorrent has been updated to 5.1 version. So that's built against the new Qt 5.91 release.
This next one is really funny because when we were doing our pre-show, I go, Rocco, I've got this great new music player I've been playing with, Hammerrock. I just love it. It's like visual music coming through and everything. And he's like, read this, Ryan, paragraph here, will you?
Wait, we have this document that we share all week long, and we put notes in it for the show. Don't you read them, man?
Let's read it verbatim because my reading interpretation here was off. Cantata, which sounds like a burrito you would order at a Mexican restaurant. QT5 music player replaces the unmaintained, that's the word I missed, KDE4 based Amarok as our default for this beta. So they've replaced the music player that I just migrated to. Just my luck.
Well, Amarok is KDE4 based, but if you're interested in maybe a alternative to Amarok, you may want to check out Clementine.
See, I've used Clementine, and I like Amarok better than Clementine.
Well,
I mean,
at least Clementine is maintained.
It has, and how dare you, sir? For all those out there, I'm going to go take the code for Amarok. I'm going to continue to support it. It will never work again.
Well, I don't know about the decision to change to Cantata, okay? Because they ask you in the notes, they say, please test this change. Because Cantata is a music player daemon front end. So you do have to configure it. And I have tried to configure it before, and it's not too difficult. But if you're a new user, it's not exactly simple. Like, it's not open up the player and play some music. So I'm not exactly sure about the change for this, but we'll wait and see how it plays out. So other applications have been updated as well. Krita, Digicam.
Love Krita. Krita is so amazing.
Really?
Have you played with Krita?
No, I have. I've never actually played with Krita.
Honestly, it can make. I mean, my artistic abilities are about as much as my Rocket League abilities.
So
I'm a pro.
You're a pro. You're a Rocketeer.
As a pro, I want to use the best. Krita can make a bad artist good. Their tools are so well laid out, so well organized. You know how frustrating it can be to open a new, paint program with all of these different icons laid out everywhere. You can't figure out how to do layers. You can't figure out how to even lasso something or do simple things. But Krita is just so inviting, the way they've laid the panels out, the easy methods and labeling for all of their tools. It's just, Krita amazes me. It is such a great program. Definitely check it out if you've not played with it.
Well, I've not played with it, so I will have to check it out. But for those of you who want to test 5.11 Plasma, you will be able to do that soon by adding a PPA. So after Plasma 5.11 comes out, you'll be able to add a PPA and test out 5.11 on Kubuntu 17.10 beta. Unfortunately,
this is the bad news
this is the bad news again. Unfortunately, when 17.10 comes out, and you want to upgrade, you're going to have to remove that PPA. When you want to upgrade from the beta to the final release, you're going to have to remove that PPA so it removes all of the changes that you had with 5.11. Because, again, the default is going to be 5.10.5 in 17.10. Now, at some point, I would assume that you would be able to add the PPA back in and re-upgrade to 5.11. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but usually that's the way it works.
Nice.
All right.
So in other news, we've got Adapta theme is now available for KDE Plasma Desktop. Now, I know this is close to your heart here because we're talking about theme being in there, but I have to say, as you've been converting me over these last few months, when I pulled up this article and looked at the Adapta theme, I was like, wow, that's beautiful. It's really beautiful. And if you add in the Papyrus icon theme set with it, which is what I use as a default in XFCE as well, it's absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
Well, Adapta is a beautiful theme that is a GTK-based theme. All right, so you could never get it on Plasma. And that's why it's so exciting because, when you switch around and you're going from a GTK-based desktop environment and then you switch back to KDE, like I would switch. And I would look for my familiar themes that I had used for a while. Some of them, they're just not there because they're GTK based. Well, Adapta now has a Plasma version of the theme, which is absolutely awesome because it's one of the best themes out there. And like you said, with the Papyrus icons, looks fabulous, dude.
Yep. It just looks very well integrated. The screenshots are gorgeous of it. So definitely go check that out.
Yep. There's a PPA you can add and install it, and you'll be good to go.
Now, this one was exciting for me. Adobe Brackets, which I never knew this was an Adobe product.
I can't believe you use an Adobe product, dude.
Well, Adobe is a clear supporter of open source software and open source environment. I mean, just look at all their... Oh, wait. Okay. Well, they've got one program at least that's open source, and that's Brackets.
They've done so well with Flash Player.
Yeah. So one of the things I looked for when I was doing the website, when I was building my own website, and I was learning HTML at the same time, HTML5, was just a really familiar, simple, yet had the advanced features of being able to, help fill in some of the code as you're typing it, so you don't have to type every single thing out. Had support for CSS and HTML5 built into it with an easy way to organize all of your different folders and everything that goes into web development. And I absolutely fell in love with Brackets. There are many options out there, and if you talk to any web developer, which I have some on my team at work they'll tell you all kinds of different options. I think their preference is Atom, which is another popular service out there, but I love Brackets. And 1.11 just got released, and here's the news item here. Here's the newsworthy item. Basically, the bug fixes and enhancements that are coming with 1.11, that's great. They're adding to it, but you're going to have the exact same version now with Brackets that you will have on Mac or Windows. So they're integrating it completely. They're committing to Linux. And now whether you're on Mac, Linux, or Windows and you download Brackets, you're going to have the same version of Brackets. And that's cool.
Why can't you just be simple and use gedit, dude?
Oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me.
I've actually never played with Brackets, so I don't know a whole lot about it. I don't do a whole lot of editing, especially on websites or anything like that. So gedit works fine for my simple use.
Yeah. Like I said, everybody has their own preference, but I think it's cool. I didn't know until this article, actually, that Adobe even made it. They don't label that anywhere within the tool itself, which if you know Adobe Premiere or other items, Adobe's everywhere. So it was kind of odd to find out that it was an Adobe product, but they do good work on that one program.
So, do you like Opera?
Yes, I like Opera, but I'll be honest, one of the things that's always bothered me about Opera was there were so many people this was before I switched to Linux, and I did a video on Opera's proxy service edition that they did. Mm-hmm. And there were so many people who were coming up with these wild conspiracies about it being owned by China and all of this stuff, and they're putting different things in it. But I found out most of that was all, in fact, all of it that they were claiming was all false. China does invest within Opera, but it scared me away while I was researching that. But I've always loved Opera. It's always been fast and snappy, and they're pushing boundaries with things that I think need to be pushed. For instance, that free proxy VPN service. Number one, it brings VPNs into the mainstream. Now, they got a lot of flack for that because it's not truly a VPN, but I don't see anybody else offering it, right? So that free proxy was very cool. They're constantly working on speed and process improvements. Most people fell in love with Opera because of its gesturing capabilities back in the day on mobile and also on desktop. So you could set it up so that, if you make a G on your screen, which would be great for you, it'd go to all your Google portfolio products.
Okay, so we got it that you like Opera. Did you notice how I just skipped over that? We got it that you like Opera. Do you like WhatsApp and Facebook?
No, well, I don't like.
They're going to be married, dude.
I know. That's the item in the news, right? You've got WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger are now going to be built in, which this does not sell Opera to me. In fact, it's kind of a detractor, frankly. Have you ever gotten a phone where Facebook app stays on the phone and you can't get rid of it?
I don't even have a Facebook account. So
I
there
don't
you
either,
have it.
but they'll generally put the Facebook icon preloaded on your Android device,
Yeah.
depending on what carrier you use. I hate that. I want it to go away, and you have to root your device sometimes to get rid of that stuff. Hopefully, they have an option where you can just turn it off out of your dock. I would imagine they would. But Facebook owns WhatsApp. Do you use WhatsApp?
I only use it because certain people that I know use it, and we've talked about before that I would love for everybody to use like one messaging app, but unfortunately, you have to go where the people you know are at. So if you have a bunch of people that use Telegram, that's great. But these certain group over here don't use Telegram. They'll use regular Messenger or they'll use WhatsApp. So yeah, there are times where I have to use WhatsApp.
It's hard for me to trust. I know that Facebook just bought them. It's hard for me to trust something Facebook owns, which is primarily driven on the idea like Google is of metadata grabbing. How much information can they get for you? But saying, hey, this is an encrypted messaging service. And, in researching WhatsApp in the past, there have been flaws detected in their encryption algorithms and issues that have been brought up in various studies done with it. But ultimately, they keep to the message that it's an encrypted service. But if you like Opera, if you use Opera, you've got those two options out there. Opera has a lot of new features, over 1,000 extensions that they have now. That they're touting, built-in RSS readers. You got the sync across all devices, which is very important to lots of people. So they've got a lot of neat features in Opera. So if you're an Opera fan, go check it out.
Definitely something to check out. And keeping with web browsers,
yeah,
there was recently news about a Chrome extension.
About a what extension?
A Chrome.
Not Firefox.
A Chrome.
Not Opera.
Chrome extension.
Chrome. It was just Chrome.
An extension that works with Chrome and Chromium. There you go. And Opera, as a matter of fact.
That's right. You'd have to add in that feature to use Chrome extensions, right?
Yep. So the Safe Browse extension, you need to remove it immediately. It's just
what an ironic name.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what they play on. Okay. But you need to remove it immediately because what they have done is they have embedded a crypto miner into this extension that starts when you start the browser. And it can take up to 60% of your CPU while it's doing its work in the background. It's harmless. It's just a little process that's running in the background. It's not really hurting anybody. So nothing to see here.
Just 60% of your CPU.
Just keep on moving. Nothing to see here. No, but seriously though, this is very bad, dude. It's good that it, people caught it, but it's very bad that they would have, whatever you would call it, to put this kind of thing in there. This is basically malware.
There's a lot of heroes out there that are capable of going through code and finding these things and pointing them out. And they really are heroes. And what's funny is they don't get a lot of publicity. The headline is Chrome extension embeds this and everybody freaks out, but nobody goes back and says, thank you to this guy who spends his time going through, or companies that go through and do this as well, looking for this type of thing and pointing it out so that people like us benefit from it who don't have the time to go look through the code. The funniest thing about this particular story, though, is that in this code, it was just the most standout wording ever. They didn't even try to hide it.
Nope.
What was it called within the code? I'm looking for it here. It's cracking me up.
Krypton Knight Worker Blob. That's what it was.
So, you don't have to be a coding expert to know something's wrong when you see that there. This is something actually a malware that happens on a lot of applications, not just in browsers, but also on your phone. A lot of those free apps that you can download, they have been discovered to have similar things. Now, generally, they're a little more discreet in how much CPU they use and that type of thing. They're trying to get as many people as they can and use as little as possible so that you don't notice it within your resources or your memory or anything else. But these guys were like, no, we're just going to take 60% of your CPU and take whatever we want. So be very careful with these extensions. The good rule of thumb is if you're not using it regularly, get rid of it.
Well, what I don't understand is this is not the first time that this extension was caught doing something. So back in November of 2015, researchers from Detectify Labs found that Safe Browse along with a few other extensions, were loading analytics code without the consent in order to track users. And yet this extension still has 140,000 users. Or at least that's what they claim they have. So I don't know where the numbers come from, but I don't understand when you find something that is going to do something like that. If they're going to do something shady, why would you continue using it?
Yeah, I think, though, the bigger thing, and this is, you're not going to like this, but it's just a fact, I think, here is that Google needs to take some responsibility for what they're letting get into their stores, whether it's their phone or their web browsers. Here, these guys blatantly put this code into this extension. I mean, it's blatant. Yep. Any AI that Google wrote, they could do this automated. It's not a resource issue. Could pull that out and see that they're trying to pull data from the browser outside of its normal usage, or look for specific malicious code. And it just, when I saw this, the first thing that came to my mind is they're just not doing enough to secure their platforms.
Google does not have the time to make AI to search every extension out there. They're so busy with making AI searching every email and search it you have. They just don't have the time to search all the extensions, okay? So I can't believe you would fault them for that.
Yeah.
All right, so with this, this actual article is from bleepingcomputer.com, and they had reached out to the developer, and he didn't answer, but there was an update, and this is a quote from the developer. It says, "Unfortunately, we have no knowledge. Apparently has been a hack. I'm currently researching. I have already contacted the Google team. The extension has not received an update for months, so I don't know what it's all about." So I don't know exactly what's going on there. Yeah. I mean, it could be just a really terrible excuse, or it could just be that somebody hacked it. I don't know. So we'll have to wait and see. But either way, uninstall this extension and never use it again.
I mean, what would you expect him to say? Like, yeah, I did it. Wouldn't that be refreshing, though?
That would be awesome if he actually said that. Yeah, pull one over on how many people, huh?
All right, what else have we got in the news here?
Well, 23.2 million. That's the number, dude.
That's how much money we've made this week?
That's how much. No, sorry. 23.2 million lines of code in Linux kernel 4.14.
Isn't that amazing?
That is absolutely awesome, dude.
So I went and did some research when I saw this article, and I found an article that said Linux kernel grows past 15 million lines of code. That was back in 2012. Now we're up to 23.2 million lines of code that are making all of these beautiful features and just making, you've got Vega improvements, Novio DRM updates, power management improvements, Intel AMD graphic compatibility improvements, performance improvements, all the different devices and media cards and everything else go into all of this beautiful 23 million lines of code. How would you like to look through 23 million lines of code to find a missing comma or something?
Oh my gosh. But excuse me. Either way, I'll just speak for myself. I take for granted sometimes when I'm
Sure.
consider myself a distro hopper. I download ISOs all the time and I put them on, and you kind of take it for granted and you don't appreciate what all goes into this. But just like we looked at all of the minor changes in the Ubuntu desktop environments, 23.2 million lines of code went into just the kernel itself of every distribution that you download. That is absolutely awesome and should be recognized.
Absolutely. So let's get into gaming, shall we?
Let's do it, man. What have you been playing this week?
You're going to be surprised by this.
Really?
I think so, because I dug deep into the archives of my game folder, my Steam folder here.
Deep.
I dug. And I noticed there was this game that some consider to be one of the greatest first-person shooters ever made that I've never played.
Wait.
And here's the shocking news.
What game is this?
Half-Life 2.
Are you kidding me?
I've never played it.
You have never played? That is one of the best FPS games or games in general around, dude, ever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why it's gone unnoticed and how I missed it all of these years, but I've owned it. I just never played it. Wow. So I've spent the time to install it and start playing it, and I've had a blast. I see why people love it so much. The implementation of vehicles, the storyline, it's constant action. You really feel like you're an action superhero in there. So if you're like me, which there's probably not many of you, and the system requirements are not steep at all, and you have not played Half-Life 2, go out there and try it. And the fact that I'm playing this definitely means Half-Life 3 confirmed.
Is that what it means?
You've heard it here first.
Well, Half-Life 2 is an awesome game that runs on Linux, by the way.
Yes.
And it, again, like you said, it has everything that you would want in a game. It has the storyline. It has the effects. It has the graphics for the time frame that it came out. Yep. To be a beautiful game. It has elements of discovery, elements of really hard places to beat. It was like an overall all-around game, and one of the best of all time.
I love that the puzzles they implemented in the game. They were puzzles, but they weren't like you've got to get a notebook out and go write down the the glyph that's on the wall and move to, it was simple, effective puzzles that if you used some reasoning in 5 minutes, you could figure it out. And it wasn't overdone. They did everything, they implemented it in it. And I haven't beat it just yet, but everything I've seen so far, it's just really a well-rounded game. I see why it's gotten so much love. But even though the Half-Life 3 was a joke, Rocco, there is some news about Half-Life. So new Half-Life gaming potential here.
New Half-Life caged from one of the former Valve workers. So this is based on Half-Life. Okay. And it is coming to Linux. Okay. So right now it's currently Windows only. Did I say that out loud?
Yes.
Windows only. Okay. But it is coming to Linux, and it has an old type. If you've ever played Half-Life before, that's basically what you're going to be playing, with a little bit of updated graphics. And I was laughing because in Half-Life 2, you run around with a crowbar, and in this thing you run around with a plunger.
Like Mario Brothers. I love it.
So the developer said he will try to add Linux and Mac support as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So,
well, you said the graphics are updated, and I think they look beautiful. I mean, it's still dated. So
it's still dated. That's what I mean. It's not.
It's a lot more polished. You don't have that jaggedness. Everything's smoothed out. Your shadowing's there. Yep. So it doesn't feel dated as playing Half-Life 2, for instance. So very cool stuff. And yes, we don't have Half-Life 3 and probably never will, but the mod community has come to the rescue and offering us some new content to play.
I think the most important thing about this is that they want to see how much people are gauging how much support for Linux is out there. Okay, so right, like I said, right now this is Windows only, but the developer said we will try to add Linux and Mac support as quickly as possible. It most likely will not be available at launch, but it's set up as Gold Source supports those platforms. So if you're interested in something like this, I'm going to leave a link in the notes to go over to the Steam community post and post in there to say you would be willing to help out beta test this on Linux.
Right.
And that will do a lot.
Even just a nice comment like, I would love to play this, or thank you for working on bringing this to Mac to Linux. That type of stuff really makes a difference. You know, my brother develops games, and those moments where you get that person that comes in there and sees your vision and tells you thank you, or I love it, or it makes such a big difference. Even on my YouTube videos, I know, like, getting that person to say nice things, you know, like, wow, I really love this. I really learned something from this. That makes all the difference in the world. To you, it seems simple. To them, it could mean the difference between whether we get the port or not, or whether they, want to spend their time with that community. If they feel like the community's viral, or maybe somebody's told them, oh, you don't want to mess with those Linux people. You want to change that perception by being one of those people that, give them that support.
Yep.
Talking about support, SC Controller has a pre-release to support more gamepads. This is something we've talked about in the past. Now, both of us have moved since to the Steam controller, which I love. But if you're one of those that likes to use other type of controllers like the Sony DualShock or the Logitech F310s, unbranded USB SNES alike controllers, you can download this and you will have the ability to go in there and map your controller and have support for it within Linux, which is super important for Linux gaming. Some people have preferences. They've got to have an Xbox controller. They got to have a PlayStation controller, or they play a certain game that requires a certain controller. Having the support, huge deal.
Yeah, because this is not something that, I mean, it seems small again. All of this stuff seems small, but if you have an old controller lying around and you want to be able to use it to play, there's really not a whole lot of options right now. So you need things like this to be able to support, so you can, map buttons and all this stuff. So it actually is a good thing.
Rocco, would you ever buy a game console? A PlayStation, an Xbox?
It depends.
Do you own one now?
I don't.
Okay. Have you ever owned one?
Sure.
Okay. What was your favorite?
PlayStation 4. No, no.
Hey, at least it wasn't Microsoft.
No, I don't have PlayStation 4. I had a PlayStation 2 at one time. I started out gaming on console. I mean, had a Nintendo 64.
A lot of people did.
I actually took a picture. I was at a local reuse it store over the weekend, and there was a 007 GoldenEye game cartridge.
Oh my gosh, that game!
I took a picture of it and sent it to the Telegram group. It was awesome. But that's what GoldenEye was awesome, dude. It was like
mining people and just the amount of ways you could just completely take out your opponents.
It was awesome.
On a split 4 or 5 people on the screen. I mean, now we couldn't even do that. At least I couldn't. My eyes would be like, I don't even know where to look. But back in the day, somehow on a tiny, 19-inch TV, we would have, 4 or 5 players on the screen.
Well, sometime I forget where it was. So somebody had made a mod of something for 007 GoldenEye. It was almost like they recreated it, and it was so pixelated that it was so almost unplayable, dude. Compared to what you have today. But back then, it didn't matter. Back then, it was awesome, regardless of what it was. So
now, in that time, did you ever own an Atari?
I didn't own an Atari, but I enjoyed going to my cousin's house and playing his Atari.
Yeah, the Atari 2600 was one of the first gaming systems I ever played with. And Atari is launching a new game console, believe it or not.
A new?
And you might be going, why is DOS Geek again going through Atari news? Or console news has nothing to do with Linux. Well, let me tell you, it's got everything to do with Linux, because this console is going to run on Linux.
The console itself is going to run on Linux.
And not only that, you can get a full PC experience, they're saying, off of it, based on the hardware they're using, an AMD processor, Radeon graphics card here, that the Linux that they're using likely is going to allow you to have the full PC experience, so you could boot into the desktop when you're done playing and start using your system as normal from your TV. I mean, that would be awesome to be able to do that. You think about some of the apps and things that you could run directly from your TV. It could become your complete media box now on top of that, without Atari even having to program all of that in. You could download the Twitch app and all of that stuff that's available.
But can you distro hop on
streamer. That's the question. Can you distro hop?
So,
if you could, I would probably end up screwing it up and it wouldn't work. But I think this is pretty exciting to see Atari back in business in a way with the hardware market.
Well, it says it's going to come preloaded with classic Atari games, but you're also going to be able. This is all speculation, I guess, because we did nothing's concrete. But they're also going to give you access to games purchased from other content platforms like Steam. So that would be a complete gaming console, I gotta say.
Yep. And so I love what they're doing here. They're kind of mixing both worlds. And for the price point, you can tell this is going to be more than just playing classic Atari games, because the price point they're saying is between $248 and $299. So nobody's going to be like, oh, I'm going to go play Centipede for $248. But, so obviously they're planning on doing some things, but instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, they're utilizing current platforms out there and leveraging it within their hardware. which I think is a very smart move. So I'm excited about it. I hope it comes to fruition. I'm excited to see Atari come back into the game.
Yep.
And I'm glad they're using Linux to do it.
All right, so you like first-person shooters, don't you? Come on. I know you're an RPG guy. Don't you
love
love first-person shooters?
Love them. Love some first-person shooters.
Okay, so a World War I first-person shooter's coming out, and it's not Battlefield because it runs on Linux. All right, so Tannenberg is going to see day one Linux support. And Tannenberg is it's a standalone expansion to Verdun. So Verdun is its own game. Tannenberg is like a next installment of it. So you will have to purchase Tannenberg, even if you have purchased Verdun, but you don't need Verdun in order to play Tannenberg. And it's set between 1914 and 1918, World War I Eastern Front. And it takes place on the Russian Empire border. So what do you think?
Well, there wasn't a lot of video outside of kind of the cinematic views of the game. And so I couldn't really see in some of the ones I was looking at when I was researching any in-game performance. But the graphics, from what I could see, what I could find, screenshots and things, looked solid. They don't look as beautiful as some of the modern day shooters out there, but certainly if you've got an itch to have a first person shooter and one of the World War scenarios, this one runs on Linux. You're not going to have to turn your back on Linux and play modern Call of Duty.
What?
World War II.
I don't know what you're talking about. Just because the beta is out right at this moment.
No tucks, no bucks, and you don't pay for the beta. Remember
really? I don't know. I happen to have a blackmail screenshot. I have a blackmailed screenshot of one DOS geek playing a new Windows-only Call of Duty World War II beta.
This was simply an investigative journey I was doing to find out what are you gonna simply investigate next? Linux.
Chrome? Are you gonna install Chrome next to investigate it?
How dare you, sir? How dare you?
All right, moving on.
Let's talk about something we can both agree on.
What's that?
We are awesome at Rocket League, and Rocket League's Autumn Update is live right now.
Right now, it is live. I have played it. And the new map is it Farm? Not Farmstead, I think it is.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Has different sounds, for the horns and stuff. It actually sounds like a tractor pull. if you've ever been to one of those, that's what it sounds like. But I played the maps that they have adjusted to fit the format. And they have banners now. So that's it's kind of like sort of lame, but sort of cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like it's a nice addition, but it really doesn't do anything for you.
How are the new arenas?
Well, the arena, I played the one that was a octagon shape, and that actually plays pretty well. But like I said before, I kind of enjoyed having the difference in the arenas. I know that for like pro players, like ourselves, that you want all of the arenas to be the same so that you can practice and do all your
every square inch, pixel.
But I really did enjoy the differences in them to other maps because, like I said, the one was dip in the middle and the sides went up. That actually brought a little bit of color to the game to where it wasn't the same constantly all the time. So I wish they would have left them in there and just left them out of the competitive play, where they would have, made the new maps and put them into the competitive play part of it, but then left the old versions or both versions in the casual play. That would have been the best scenario. But
I think it's important to change things up. I mean, people get so used to playing the same maps, even in a competitive environment, over and over again, that they learn every little trick and nuance, and now they have to relearn that stuff. So welcome to Rocco and I's world. So I think it could be a good thing. But I have in my hands for our last piece of news here, Rocco, the most coveted item probably out today. And we're going to go back to consoles again, but this, of course, is related.
I thought you had an actual copy of Google on your computer.
The most coveted thing in the world. Look at this, man.
a Super Nintendo Classic Edition.
Look at that.
That is awesome, dude.
So my wife sat in line at Walmart from 6 p.m. till midnight to grab me this. And of course, I didn't play it till the morning because I was way too tired.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
How lame I am.
Yeah, thank you to your wife. I'll just go to sleep now. I know you stood in line all that time, but
all for me. Well, that and she wanted to get away from the kids. But this is the reason why we bring this up in this news article is obviously this is super popular. The original mini that they released like this before, which was also very hard to get a hold of and coveted, we know was confirmed to run on Linux. And they believe this one is as well because it's the same team, Nintendo Paris-based European Research and Development Group, that's running it. And this has basically an ARM Cortex A7, so more of a mobile chip in there, 256 megabytes of DDR3, 512 megabytes of NAND storage, 22 games, and the special thing about this is Star Fox 2, which was never released, can be unlocked on this little box.
Wow.
So it's cool seeing Nintendo base their systems on Linux. So if you're thinking, I don't want to use consoles, I want to only use Linux, you can use this and still be proud, unlike Rocco booting into Windows playing Call of Duty 3.
Wow, that's so uncalled for, dude. Such hostility. I don't understand. I did nothing to this guy, and he just keeps on and on and on.
Well, look at this beautiful shirt, Rocco.
You know what that reminds me of?
What's that?
The Destination Linux apparel page. Look at that. That looks
Gorgeous.
awesome, dude.
Man. I mean, I make it look better. It won't look this good on anybody else.
Whoa. Yeah. That goes without being said, right?
Yeah, like our Rocket League play.
You can go to teespring.com/Destination Linux podcast and get a shirt just like Ryan has.
That's right.
Or a coffee mug like I have.
Or I have.
There you go. All right. So the Telegram group, guys, have been very active lately. Oh my gosh. I go back, I go to it and I'll come back to it. There's like 400 and some messages. I'm like, no, just no. Scrolling down to the end. There's just no way I'm doing it. But they have been very active and great bunch of guys in there, girls. And I suggest you join them. And
definitely.
You can do that at www.destinationlinux.org/Telegram.
And they cover a wide variety of topics, and there's a wide variety of user knowledge in there. So you have your experts in there, you have some beginners, some people who hop distros, some people who are pro one thing and don't ever mention another, but they're still nice to talk to, and they're not, everybody seems to get along very well within the Telegram group, even though you kind of have that vast grouping of different individuals. Every once in a while, things will get a little snippy, but that's to be expected. But overall, it's a really fun group to be a part of. So even if you're new to Linux, is not something you want to talk in right away, go in there and just kind of ghost it, watch and listen to what everybody's talking about, because generally they're very current on new things going on as well.
All right, so where are we going to find you this week, Ryan?
We are going to play Rocket League Autumn Edition. We've got to, man. I've not even booted into it. I've been too busy playing that beta. Oh my God.
Oh my gosh, did you say that out loud?
Oh, cut that out of the video.
He's been too busy playing the Call of Duty World War II PC beta that's only available on Windows.
Well, the good news for most people is it's not as exciting, that beta, which I paid nothing for, as we all had hoped for, at least right now. What did you think?
Well, I was hoping you would get into this, because when something comes out like this, it's got this effect on, like, you expect it to be up here, like really awesome.
Sure.
Okay, because this is a major title. And it is a good game. As far as, I mean, I played a couple hours yesterday. It is a good game, and there's a lot of good features in it. It's not to the level of overwhelming that I was hoping for.
Right.
It's not that game that drives you back to playing it over and over again. But there's so many good features on it. It's kind of like they melted down TF2 and Battlefield 1 and Call of Duty, and you had mentioned Overwatch.
Overwatch, yeah.
And that's basically what the game is. And it's really fun to play. I had a blast playing it. Mm-hmm. But it's just not, that I think we set the bar too high sometimes. You know what I mean?
Maybe. I think a lot of it has to do with, a lot of these games that we think about with AAA titles, and in a lot of cases, frankly, we miss out on the Linux side. And you think, oh, well, I'll boot into Windows to go play this because I'm really missing out on it. And then you get into it and you start playing it, and it's kind of like that. You don't get that feeling that you really want to come back. Like, while I played it and I had fun and there's nothing wrong with the game, I don't really want to boot back into Windows to play it again because it wasn't that fun. And it just seems like I've seen this model over and over again. They took Overwatch, very small arenas. You can't even customize your character at all. Everybody looks exactly the same. I mean, as far as your face and things goes, you can obviously have like different outfits on. I think there's 4 different classes or something that you can play with, maybe a couple more you can unlock. But small battle arenas, fast-paced battles that are over in like 5 minutes, and lots of deaths that occur everywhere. People spawning behind you, to the side of you. It's chaos. Very much like Overwatch. If you took Overwatch and just overlaid World War II theme stuff on it, you've got the game. Although I think Overwatch is probably a little more in depth to the characters and things that they have, but very similar to that. And I feel like that's happening a lot with these titles when they're, releasing new versions of it. They're just taking the same thing, dumping a new overlay on it, and going, here's your new game. It's good. Like you said, there was nothing wrong with the older Call of Duties. They were all great as well, but is it anything groundbreaking that you would want to go buy or spend $59 on it? I don't know about you, but even if it was out for Linux, I wouldn't pay $59 for it.
Wow, that's saying something, especially for a game of that caliber that's coming out. Yeah. I probably would pay for it, but like I said, it's not something that's overwhelming. So.
Interesting.
Well,
there you go.
We can talk more about it on Friday Night Live.
There you go.
So by the time this video comes out, Friday Night Live will have been recorded and be up on the website. So if you want to check that out, check out my channel on YouTube. And that's all we got, man. You got anything else for this week?
No, definitely go check out my channel on YouTube, Das Geek channel, out there for some new content and maybe some XFCE customization stuff.
Oh my gosh, here we go. We better end it on there.
You better tune in. How dare you?
All right, so we thank everybody for supporting us and watching, listening.
Thank you to the Patreons.
Yep. Have a great week, and remember, the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Destination Linux Podcast.
Look, man, you keep picking on me for my pixels. And there's a problem with that. Gloves are off now, brother.
That's right. Drawing a line in the sand. A perfectly pixelated line.